Good evening, all. And the first thing I'm going to say, I didn't really plan a time specifically because I wasn't sure how long it would take. Carter might end up jumping in here, but right now he's just waiting to eat. And first thing I'm going to say is Christos Rozdaється. What that means is Christ is born. And on this night, many people, especially Eastern European, are those that follow the Julian calendar. Tonight is Christmas Eve. And that is something that I grew up with. And this is actually the first time that I've prepared in, 10 years. It's been a real journey for me to get to a place where I want to share. And normally, would it be a lot of people? But this is something that is really special to me, and special for a number of reasons. Growing up, I didn't really understand. We always celebrated 2 Christmases, and I couldn't understand why, but I thought it was cool. And part of it is one side of my family were Orthodox and Ukrainian, and so they followed the Julian calendar. And it was always a special. We had what we called English Christmas, which was December 25th, or what most people will say Merry Christmas. But I always looked forward to this night, where it was so steeped in years and years of tradition. And yes, they're traditions of man, but I think I had a deeper understanding of what Christmas really was, because it wasn't about Santa Claus or Christmas trees or anything like that. And so the Christmas Eve especially, there's 12 dishes that are made, 12 to represent the 12 disciples and the original disciples that followed Jesus. And each dish has different meaning as well. And one of the first dishes, in fact, I spent a lot of time today in between working, is the Kolach, which is bread. And it's a braided bread. And there's 3 to represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And you can't really see, but there's little doves that I made out of bread that are baked in there, and of course the dove representing the Holy Spirit. And again, it's the 3 loaves, but they're braided as well. I don't know if you can see that. And again, the braid represents the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so that, I haven't made it for a long time, and trying to adjust to the altitude today took a little bit of time. The other dish, I'm going to show you each dish so you can see 12 dishes. So that was one. Number 2 is this little dish called Kuchya. And what Kuchya is, and it is also called God's dish. Why? I'm not 100% sure. But it is made with wheat and nuts and poppy seed, and then a syrup made with honey. And the honey represents the sweetness of Christ. Third dish is Borscht, which I had posted about earlier, and I don't know if you can see that, but a beet borscht. All of the meal has no meat or dairy, and the reason being is that because of the animals that were in the manger. There is one protein, a couple proteins with beans, but fish. So that's dish number 4. And I've got some pickled herring here. And as well, I'm not going to show it because it's still baking, but I have some baked salmon that I'm doing. And for us that are believers, we understand what the fish is about. But for those, part of the dishes and why fish is eaten is because at Christmas, whatever day it is when Christ came to lead us all to be fishers of men. So that was dish number 4. And I put a few other little things together. Here, there's cabbage rolls, which are called holoptsi, and it's not a literal translation, but it means little doves. And so there's rice and dill wrapped inside a cabbage. There is sauerkraut and peas. That's number 4. That's 5, 6. There's mashed beans with garlic. So in New Mexico here, the refried beans, it's very similar to that, but it uses a white bean with a lot of garlic. And then there is mushrooms. And then what are called varaniki are, a lot of people know them as pierogies, but any Ukrainian tells somebody that is Polish that they're varaniki, they're going to say no, they're a pierogi, vice versa. But they're basically little dumplings that are there. And then we have these little tarts that are made, and usually these are in a little donut form. I just didn't make the donuts today. And what they're filled with prunes and honey and nuts. So a lot of the cooking involves honey, like I was saying earlier, because honey, it represents the sweetness of Christ. And then some fresh fruit. And I picked an orange because that was something that my grandfather, Paul, who passed away when I was 10, but he was a man that I was very, very close to. And he really meant a lot to me and taught me a lot. And he was a man that actually had a hit on his head from the Russians because he spoke, well, we don't know all his history. We know that the majority of his family were murdered by communists. He had to hide and escape communism, and he fought in the underground army against communism. And had really quite the story to tell. And he was an incredible musician. He played mandolin. He was also a dancer. And he's the one that I learned a lot of these traditions from. And I wanted to show you tonight how to make, this is Carter's favorite, and Carter's hiding out right now. And I'm just going to make these real quick because we're both hungry. And I've already prepared the dough. These are the varaniki, or the pierogies. The dough itself is actually really easy to make. And like I said, there is no dairy, there's no eggs, no meat, no nothing with this whole meal. And what the dough is made up of is flour, a little bit of salt, a little bit of vegetable oil, and then the trick, I can't believe I'm giving away the family secret here, but that's okay, is using potato water. So when you boil potatoes for the mashed potatoes, which is one of the fillings, then you use the hot water from it, and that's what creates the dough, and you roll it out fairly thin. I have this really nifty little tool that I bought quite some time ago, and it's a specialty place. The old school way of doing it is cutting the dough into little squares, and then you turn them into triangles. But because I make these a lot, I found this little tool online, and so I can use them. Now the filling I'm making tonight, this happens sometimes. Sometimes the dough is just a little too thin, so I just got to add more flour. Not a big deal. But the filling tonight, I've made two kinds. Some I already have done, and it's with sauerkraut. And the other filling I'm doing tonight is with potato. Now Carter's favorite is with potato and cheese. And I've also made them as a I'm not having them tonight, where I've used potatoes, cheese, and green chili. They're so good. But anyway, tonight is just mashed potatoes. And what I did add, just to get a little bit of flavor, some salt and pepper, along with the nutritional yeast, which gives it that kind of little bit of a cheesy flavor. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you the old school way first. And I'm trying to do this fairly quickly. But while I was preparing a lot of these things, I had a lot of different thoughts. All the different people that, have passed on, people I've learned from. It's been an interesting time, and I'm really, really enjoying doing this. And that's another little tradition that is involved with this evening, is a table would be set, but there was always one place setting left, empty. So the table would be set and one plate and everything would be put out for those that have passed on, and it was also for any stranger that might come by that needed a meal. And that was just kind of one of those traditions. So as you can see, I'm doing the old school kind. You just make a little square. You take a little bit of filling. And again, this filling I'm doing right now is just potato, salt, pepper, and you would make these little squares, little triangles. Just stuff it in there. And because of the potato water in there, it sticks. And then what you do, once that's done, you can kind of see it. It's like almost a little ravioli. And you boil water, throw them into the water. Once they float to the top, they're ready. And, a lot of people will eat them with sour cream. Well, of course, tonight, one of the traditions is no sour cream. So you can do some, fried onions on them, which are really delicious. Put the mushroom gravy on that's made. Lots of different things. But if you saw the title, Ochanash, and I'm probably going to cry. That's okay. Ochanash is something where in the Ukrainian language, it was interesting. As a child, I was fluent in Ukrainian. But my mom didn't understand the language, so we didn't use it at home. So I kind of lost some of the language. I still understand it and can speak some of it. And I'm sure if I was around people, I would be able to speak it all over again. But one thing I was pondering today and thinking on was the name Ochanash. And Ochanash means our Father. And it's different than our biological father. Our biological father, like daddy, or dad, in Ukrainian you say tato. So it's different, because Ochanash is reserved for our Father. And as I thought of that today, and all the different traditions, and this is the first time I am making all of these dishes since I came to New Mexico, so I'm a little emotional about all of this, because it carries a lot of memory for me. But today I understand, as a child, I just thought it was a great way to get out of school. I didn't have to go to school with the other kids because it was Ukrainian Christmas. But there was something really, really, truly beautiful that, as my relationship with the Lord has grown, is that I really understand the significance and why I was always a little more connected to these traditions than what I've always called English Christmas. I never did get the Santa thing. I still think that's creepy. But Ochanash, it's just so powerful and so beautiful, because Ochanash is our Father that is over all of us. Whether we have, in here in New Mexico, it's Pozole on Christmas Eve, which was December 24th, or in the tradition that many are celebrating right now. Little traditions like you don't eat until the first star appeared, and everything very following. It's all symbolic. It's all traditions of men, but ultimately it's a celebration of Ochanash, our Father. And I did this as well, knowing that this video that my daddy, Nestor, likes to watch these little videos that Carter and I do. And It's a way to connect. But again, Ochanash is his father, just as Ochanash is my father. And yes, I've made 12 dishes. I've got a lot more to make. In fact, I probably am not going to show how this little tool works, but you can see how these little Veronica, they're super simple to make. They're just time consuming. I guess it's like when you make tamales, right? They're time consuming. And this was something that I would do with my grandmother. And we would spend hours and hours and hours. And there's so many different kinds of fillings. Like tonight I'm doing some with potatoes, some with sauerkraut. I've had them with fruit, sometimes potato and dill. Like there's a variety of fillings, and they're kind of a staple. I usually have them in my freezer all the time. They're the ultimate fast food, because once you have them and you freeze them individually, I bag them up, keep them in the freezer, and for a quick meal I boil water, toss them in there, and done. So I wanted to come on tonight and just share a little bit about my traditions. And their traditions of man, but I just think, may we all remember Ochanash is different than our biological dad, because our biological dad, Ochanash, is his father too. And the rest of the night, Carter's hungry. I mean, that's another tradition, is you don't eat all day, you fast until it's time to eat and celebrate. And another thing I didn't do as well was there was always hay put underneath the table, and that was to represent the manger. And as a little girl, I thought that was so much fun. We'd go underneath the dining room table, and my grandfather, who we called Gito, Paul, he would always tuck in little coins and candies and nuts and different things in the hay that was underneath the table. And that was just such a joy for me, and just to remember all of these things, and also look at them with a different light, and have that understanding of that it's never about religion or traditions of man, but why we do it. And tonight, this was just something that I really felt led to do. But as well, like I said, how there's always a table, place setting left for a stranger that might show up that needed to be fed. And also to remember those that are past. A big part of why we started all of what we've been doing is this little orphanage that Carter and I have been supporting. And some of you I know, thank you so much, that have jumped on side and contributed where you can. And we might not think $5 is a lot, but $5 goes a long way for this orphanage, or 10, or whatever it is. There's 104 children, and a lot of times they have nothing to eat. But the wealth that these children, they're really so truly beautiful. And as you get to know them, and in fact, take a look at Good Deeds, their Facebook page, and you get to know some of these children. They're so beautiful, and they just often just need something to eat. So it seems strange to be cooking to bring awareness, but that's what I do. So I will say again, and the other, I'll teach you again a little bit of Ukrainian. So, Christos rozdaється means Christ is born. And then the response that people would say is Slavit Yaho, which means let's glorify him. So, Christos rozdaється, Christ is born. Slavit Yaho, let's glorify him in all we do. Love you.